Hi there, you're on the Forsaken Joe channel, and today's story will make your jaw drop. She walked back into the house like nothing had happened, hair perfect, perfume still fresh, a faint smile as if the night had been just another normal dinner. But when I looked around, I realized my entire life had been erased while she was gone. Every trace of me, my books, my clothes, even the framed picture of us from our wedding day, vanished, as if I'd never existed here. I didn't even ask her about the dinner. My voice got stuck in my throat because the living room looked like a stranger's home. The couch had her new pillows on it, but my blanket was gone. The shelf where I kept my vinyl records was empty, just a faint outline of dust where they used to sit. I felt dizzy, like I'd stepped into an alternate version of my life. When I finally managed to speak, it came out as a whisper. "What's going on?" She didn't answer me. She just looked at me with that tired, almost irritated expression I'd seen before. The one that said, "You don't get it, Jonah. You never get it." She dropped her purse on the table, pulled out a receipt, and left it there like it was nothing. It was from a restaurant I'd never heard of, with a bottle of wine more expensive than my entire grocery budget for the week. And then she walked upstairs without a word. I stayed frozen, staring at the receipt, my mind spinning in a million directions. Did she just decide to erase me from this house? Was this some kind of cruel joke? Then I noticed something in the trash. Torn up papers. When I dug them out, my hands shaking, I realized they were my letters. Those old love notes I wrote her years ago, ripped to shreds like they were trash. That's when it hit me. Something massive had shifted while she was out with her boss tonight. I don't know what they talked about, but I know that when she walked back into this house, she wasn't the same woman I married. And I'm starting to wonder if this house was ever truly mine at all. I sat there at the kitchen table for what felt like an eternity. That crumpled restaurant receipt lying in front of me like evidence in a crime scene. I kept staring at the name of the place, the Mariner's Table. I'd never even heard of it, but just the thought of her sitting there, laughing with her boss, sipping on that overpriced bottle of wine, made me feel sick. It wasn't just jealousy. It was this gnawing feeling that she wasn't simply having dinner. Something in my gut screamed there was more, and that receipt was just the tip of the iceberg. When she finally came downstairs, she was scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even there. I asked her, "Mallory, why are all my things gone?" She didn't even look up, just kept walking past me, muttering something like, "You wouldn't understand." And I swear, I almost lost it right there. My entire existence had been packed away or thrown out, and she acted like I was a ghost haunting my own home. I tried to follow her, but she locked herself in the bedroom. I banged on the door, begging for answers, but she stayed silent. After a few minutes, I gave up and went back downstairs, my mind spinning like a tornado. That's when I saw something sticking out of the trash bag by the door, an envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I opened it, half expecting a divorce letter, but instead, it was a bank slip. A withdrawal of $3,000, all in cash, taken out earlier that evening from our joint account. No explanation, nothing. Then I noticed something that sent a chill crawling up my spine. On the back of the receipt from the restaurant, there was a single word written in her handwriting, "Soon." No context, no date, just that one word, like some kind of message meant for someone else. My chest tightened. Who was this message for? Her boss? Daniel, the name I found on that napkin? Or was this something even bigger? I spent the rest of the night sitting in the dark, clutching that receipt like it was a lifeline. I couldn't stop imagining what she was hiding, what was coming soon. Was I about to lose everything, or had I already lost it? I didn't sleep at all. Every creak of the house felt like a warning. Every car that passed outside made me wonder if someone was coming for me. And the worst part? I still don't know if I'm overreacting, or if I'm just now waking up to a truth that's been staring me in the face for years. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit there like some clueless husband while my life fell apart. I grabbed that receipt from the Mariner's Table and decided to find out what the hell had gone down during that work dinner. I wasn't thinking straight. My hands were shaking as I drove to the restaurant, the streets empty, the early morning light, casting this cold, lifeless glow over everything. I felt like I was heading towards something I didn't want to see, but I couldn't stop myself. When I got there, the place was closed, but I didn't care. I sat in my car staring at the building, that sleek modern design mocking me. I imagined her sitting inside with her boss, smiling, leaning in close. The thought made me physically sick. But then something weird happened. A delivery guy came out the back door, and on impulse I walked up and asked him about the night before. Was there a woman here, about this tall, black dress, red lipstick? He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Then he said something that froze me. Oh yeah, she left with the guy in the gray suit. They looked close, man. I swallowed hard. Her boss wears a gray suit. Always. My chest tightened, but I kept pushing. I showed him the receipt, asked if he remembered them ordering room service or anything like that. He shrugged, but then said, "They left with a couple of bags, though. Looked like they were heading to the Harborview Hotel. Big spenders." That name hit me like a truck. Harborview Hotel. It was 5 blocks from here. And suddenly the picture of the night became clearer, sharper, and so much uglier. I drove to the hotel. My hands were slick with sweat on the wheel. I don't even know why I went. Maybe to prove myself wrong. Maybe to find some innocent explanation. But when I walked into that lobby, I spotted something instantly. A black scarf on the back of a chair near the bar. Her scarf. The one I bought her on our last trip. My heart was pounding in my ears as I picked it up, and I swear I could still smell her perfume on it. I asked the receptionist, trying to sound casual but failing miserably, if anyone named Mallory had checked in last night. She looked at me with this polite smile and said she couldn't give out guest information. But then she added, "Sir, if you're here to pick up your wife, she already checked out about an hour ago." My blood went cold. I didn't tell her my wife's name. How did she know? I mumbled something incoherent and stumbled out of there, my head spinning. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Where had she gone? Why had she emptied our account? Why had she erased me from the house? When I got home, Mallory was gone again. No note, no explanation. But on the kitchen table, right where the receipt had been, there was something new. A hotel key card. And scrawled across the back of it in the same handwriting as before, just one word. Wait. I don't know what game she's playing, but I feel like I'm being led into something bigger, something I'm not ready for. I must have stared at that little piece of plastic for a full 5 minutes before I even touched it. It felt like a trap, like I was stepping into a story I hadn't agreed to be part of. My wife, Mallory, didn't leave a note, didn't leave her phone, didn't leave me a single word other than "wait" written on the back of that hotel key. The house was painfully silent, as if it was holding its breath. I wasn't sure if I should go to the hotel or if I should just pack a bag and leave for good. But I'm Jonah, the guy who never leaves, who always waits. And so, I went. Driving to Harborview Hotel, I kept replaying every conversation we'd had over the last few weeks, trying to find the moment where everything went wrong. She had been distant, sure, but I thought it was just work stress. She never mentioned anything about needing space or feeling unhappy. Maybe I didn't notice the signs because I didn't want to. I'm the guy who avoids conflict, who tells himself everything is fine until the world is burning down around him. When I arrived, I didn't even go to the front desk. I just went straight to the elevator, clutching the key card like a lifeline. I didn't know which floor it was for, but I kept trying it on every door, feeling like a lunatic as I worked my way down the hallway. And then, click. Room 817. My pulse was pounding in my ears as I turned the handle. Inside, the air smelled faintly of her perfume, mixed with something heavier. Whiskey, maybe. The bed was perfectly made, but there was an open suitcase on the chair. Not hers. It was a man's. Clothes neatly folded, an expensive watch on the side table, and a half-empty bottle of wine next to 2 glasses. My stomach turned as I noticed lipstick marks on one of the glasses. Her shade. I didn't even have to think twice. I knew. I checked the bathroom, half expecting to find someone there, but it was empty. Then I saw something that stopped me cold. On the desk, there was a piece of hotel stationery with her handwriting on it. I recognized it instantly. It wasn't a love note or a goodbye letter. It was a list. A list of things she had taken from the house. My documents, our bank information, even my old journals. And next to each item was a check mark, like she'd been following some kind of plan. At the bottom of the page, there was one more word. Tonight. I stood there, staring at that word, my throat dry, my mind spinning. What was happening tonight? Was she planning to leave for good? Was I just a name to be crossed off the list? I don't remember how long I stayed in that room, but eventually I realized I couldn't just sit there. I grabbed the piece of paper and left before anyone could see me. When I got home, the house felt even emptier than before. There were no lights on, no sound, just the echo of my own footsteps. And then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed something on the front porch, a black envelope taped to the door, my name on it. Inside was a photograph. It was Mallory standing next to her boss in front of that same hotel, both of them smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. On the back of the photo, there was a message. "You'll understand soon." What happened next shook me to my core. That photograph wasn't just a picture, it was a message. Mallory's smile in it wasn't the smile I knew. It wasn't warm or loving. It was sharp, almost mocking, as if she knew I would eventually see it and crumble. And the man next to her, her boss, I assumed, had his hand around her waist in a way that made my blood boil. I turned the photo over again, staring at the words, "You'll understand soon." What was I supposed to understand? That my wife had been living a double life while I sat at home, convincing myself everything was fine? I dropped the photo onto the kitchen counter and grabbed my phone, desperate to call her again, but I stopped. She wasn't going to answer. She didn't want to. I started scrolling through her social media, every picture of us now looking fake, every caption hollow. And then I noticed something I'd never seen before. In almost every recent post, there was a reflection, a hint of someone in the background who wasn't me, a man in a gray suit. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but the more I looked, the more it felt deliberate. Like he was always there, lurking, and I was too blind to see it. The realization hit me like a punch. She hadn't just gone out to dinner with her boss. She'd been staging this for weeks, maybe months. I walked around the house like a trapped animal, checking every corner, every drawer, hoping for something that would tell me why she was doing this. That's when I found her old tablet buried in the back of our closet, tucked under a pile of blankets. It wasn't password protected. Mallory never cared about that. And as soon as I turned it on, I saw a string of emails that made my stomach twist. The emails weren't just between her and her boss. There were messages from someone else, Daniel, the same name I'd found on that napkin. And these emails weren't romantic. They were worse. They were about plans, about meetings in hotels, about tonight being the last step. One line stood out like fire burning on the screen. "Once it's done, he won't even realize what hit him." I knew they were talking about me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My own wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was talking about me like I was some obstacle to be removed. I didn't know if this was about money, revenge, or something darker, but I couldn't stay there another second. I grabbed my keys and got into my car, not even sure where I was going. I just needed answers, and I knew the only place I might find them was that hotel. When I pulled up to Harborview for the second time, I parked across the street and just sat there, watching the entrance. Cars came and went, strangers walking in and out, but I kept scanning every face, waiting for hers to appear. I must have sat there for an hour, my mind buzzing with every worst-case scenario. Then, just as I was about to leave, I saw a familiar figure coming out of the side entrance. It wasn't Mallory, it was her boss. He was alone, but he was carrying something, a duffel bag, heavy, like it was filled with bricks. He looked around, cautious, before loading it into the trunk of a black sedan. I don't know what came over me, but I started my car and followed him. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, my pulse racing as I tailed him through the city streets. He drove fast, like he knew someone might be watching, and eventually turned down an industrial road near the harbor. The area was quiet, too quiet, with only the sound of waves crashing against the docks. He parked, got out of the car, and dragged that bag into an old warehouse. I stayed in my car, gripping the wheels so hard my knuckles turned white, torn between fear and the desperate need to know what was inside that warehouse. What was in the bag? What did Mallory have to do with this? And why did I feel like if I didn't find out now, I might never get another chance? If you've made it this far, you know I'm in deep, far deeper than I ever wanted to be. The moment I saw Mallory's boss slip into that warehouse with the duffel bag, I knew I couldn't just sit in my car like a coward. Something about that bag, its size, the way he dragged it like it weighed 100 pounds, made my chest tighten with a fear I can't even explain. I had two choices: turn the key, drive away, and pretend I didn't see any of this, or follow the thread of lies that had been unraveling my life. And if you've been paying attention, you know I'm too much of a fool to walk away. I parked about a block away, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The warehouse was old and forgotten, the kind of place you only see in movies, a rusty metal door, cracked windows, and no lights except for a single flickering bulb over the entrance. I crept closer, every step feeling heavier than the last, and pressed my ear to the door. I could hear faint voices inside, two men talking. I recognized one of the voices immediately. It was him, Mallory's boss. The other voice, deeper and slower, was someone I didn't know. They were talking about the handoff and making sure he doesn't figure it out until it's too late. Those words cut through me like a knife. Were they talking about me? Was this all some elaborate plan to take everything from me? My mind was racing. I pictured Mallory, her smile, her silence, her strange notes saying, "Wait" and "soon." And suddenly it all felt like I was living inside someone else's nightmare. I wanted to burst through that door, demand answers, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I found a small gap in the rusted siding and peeked inside. The sight made my stomach twist. On a table in the center of the room were stacks of cash, far more than anything I'd ever seen in my life. And next to the cash was my name, written on a folder in thick black marker. It wasn't just a folder, it was a file full of documents. From where I stood, I recognized some of them: my bank statements, my work history, even copies of my driver's license. Why would they have that? Why would Mallory's boss have a file on me? I stepped back, my breath shaking, and that's when the door behind me creaked. A shadow fell across the gravel. I turned slowly, and for a split second, I thought I saw Mallory. She was standing there, wearing that same black dress from the dinner, her expression unreadable. "Jonah," she said softly, almost like she was surprised to see me. "You weren't supposed to be here yet." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt like it was closing, my voice barely a whisper. "What is this? What's going on? Why do they have my name in there?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced toward the warehouse door, her jaw tightening like she was weighing whether to run or tell me the truth. Finally, she sighed, stepping closer, and the smell of her perfume hit me, sweet, familiar, but suddenly unsettling. "You need to trust me, Jonah. This isn't what you think." I laughed, an empty, bitter laugh I didn't even recognize as my own. "Trust you? You erased me from our house, Mallory. You took our money. You've been meeting with these people, whoever they are, and now there's a folder with my name on it sitting next to a mountain of cash. What the hell is going on?" Her eyes softened for a moment, and I swear I saw guilt flicker across her face. "If I tell you," she said quietly, "you won't see me the same way again. But if I don't, you're going to end up in a situation you can't crawl out of." She reached into her purse and pulled out something I didn't expect. A second hotel key card. She pressed it into my hand. "Go to this room tonight, Jonah. You'll find the answers you want, but please, don't follow me again. It's not safe." Before I could respond, a voice shouted from inside the warehouse, and Mallory's boss appeared in the doorway, his face pale when he saw me. "Jonah? What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't wait to find out what would happen next. I bolted. I don't even remember getting back to my car, just the sound of my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my footsteps on the gravel. As I sped away, that second hotel keycard burned in my hand like it was the only thread I had left to pull. Tonight, I'm going to that room. I don't know what I'll find, but something tells me I'm about to uncover the truth, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it. If you've been following along, you probably think you've got a sense of where this story is heading. I promise you don't. Because nothing could have prepared me for what I found when I used that second hotel keycard. I waited until after sunset to go. My nerves were shot, my head spinning with too many questions and no real answers. I felt like a man walking toward his own execution, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know what Mallory meant when she said I'd find the answers in this room. My hands were sweating so badly I almost dropped the key card as I slid it into the slot on the door. The light turned green with a soft beep, and I stepped inside, heart pounding. The room was dark and colder than I expected, like no one had stayed there in days. But I could smell something faint, Mallory's perfume again, mingled with something metallic, like rust or blood. I fumbled for the light switch and froze as soon as the lights flickered on. This wasn't a normal hotel room. It looked like someone had been living here, hiding here. There were papers everywhere, taped to the walls, photographs, bank statements, documents, even snapshots of me. Some were recent, like from last week, me leaving for work, me walking to my car. Others were older, going back years. I felt my chest tighten as I realized someone had been watching me for a long time. On the desk, there was a single black notebook, and when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was filled with notes about my life, my daily routines, my habits, where I shopped, even the nights I stayed late at work. It was so detailed it felt invasive, like I was reading a biography written by a stranger who knew me better than I knew myself. And right in the middle of all those pages was one word written over and over again. Remove. I stumbled back, the notebook shaking in my hands. Remove me? Was that what Mallory and her boss had been planning? Some kind of setup? I didn't have time to process it because that's when I saw something in the corner of the room. A duffel bag, identical to the one her boss had carried into the warehouse. My fingers trembled as I unzipped it, expecting cash or maybe something worse. Inside were stacks of documents, passports, fake IDs, and bundles of money wrapped with rubber bands. And at the very bottom, I found something that made me drop to my knees. My wedding ring. The ring I'd lost 2 years ago and thought was gone forever. I was shaking, trying to put the pieces together, when I heard a noise behind me. The door clicked open. I spun around, and there she was, Mallory, her face pale, her eyes wide like she hadn't expected me to actually show up. "Jonah," she said, her voice low but sharp. "You weren't supposed to see this yet." I couldn't speak. My mind was a storm of anger and confusion. "What the hell is going on?" I finally managed to choke out. "Why is there a file on me? Why are you doing this? Who are you even working with?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed the door softly, walked toward me, and sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped together like she was praying. "I never wanted you to find out this way," she whispered. "But if I don't tell you now, you're going to end up just like the others." "The others?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "What others?" She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Jonah, this isn't about us. It's bigger than you think. That file, it's not just about you. It's about everyone connected to me, everyone who could get hurt if I don't do what they say." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but before I could, a loud knock rattled the door. Mallory's head snapped up and the blood drained from her face. "They're here," she hissed. "If you want to live, you need to trust me now. No questions. Just do exactly what I tell you." I stood there, frozen, torn between anger, fear, and the sickening realization that my wife might be involved in something far darker than I ever imagined. When that knock hit the door, my heart stopped. I was ready for anything. A confrontation, a fight, maybe even the end of my marriage right there in that strange hotel room. But what I wasn't ready for was the truth that came next. Mallory grabbed my hand, her grip tight and trembling. "Please," she whispered, "let me talk first." Before I could respond, she opened the door. Standing there was not some threatening figure in a gray suit. It was a woman, older, with kind eyes and a look of relief on her face. She stepped inside and hugged Mallory. "You did it," she said softly. "You got him here." I was completely confused. Mallory turned to me, her eyes filled with tears I'd never seen her shed before. "Jonah, I've been protecting you," she said, her voice breaking. "Those files, the money, the notes, they weren't about hurting you, they were about keeping you safe." She explained everything in a rush, as if afraid I'd bolt before she finished. Her boss, the mysterious Daniel, the cash, they were all part of an undercover operation. Mallory had been working with a private security group to take down a dangerous network that had been targeting people at her firm, and I was on the list simply because I was her husband. "All those nights I was gone," she continued, "I wasn't with anyone else. I was working with them, making sure they never touched you. I couldn't tell you, Jonah. I needed you to believe I was just distant. I'm sorry you had to see it like this." I felt like an idiot. All the anger, all the paranoia, all the awful things I thought about her, none of them were true. She'd been risking everything for me, for us. When the woman, who turned out to be an investigator, left, Mallory and I sat in that strange hotel room for hours, talking, crying, and finally understanding each other again. By the time we walked out of there, the city lights seemed brighter, the air lighter. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't the cold, distant silence from before. It was the silence of two people who'd survived something huge together. When we walked through the front door, she smiled at me, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like home again. We unpacked the things she'd hidden, put our photos back on the walls, and just held each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And now I'm here, sharing this wild ride with you guys on Forsaken Joe, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You never really know the full story until you dig deep. So tell me, what's the most shocking or unexpected twist you've ever had in a relationship? Drop your stories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Forsaken Joe for more unbelievable tales like this one.